it's your responsibility to go into meditation, find a little bit of time, 10-15 minutes, and remote view who's up there and how many.
I can attest to the fact that real phenomenon happens here. I really feel that his CE5 protocols are based on a spiritual kind of positive contact, and I think that that is an excellent model for any kind of communication, whether it be on Earth, in the United Nations or wherever, but in this particular field it's with cosmic cultures.
And we use consciousness, meditation, visualization, remote viewing, certain tones, and we do it in a group when we can, or even as individuals.
It's just been this series of unbelievable events that are amplified by our meditation. It enforces this communication between us and the ETs, and it's so interactive.
I could feel everything, I could hear all the sounds just right there.
Perfect.
And then this being the little larval one comes up, and we had this hug, and I shared the joy in it, and I'm like just thanking it for this experience. And let's do what we can to feel as if it would feel that this is perfectly normal and natural.
Oh, sure.
And that, this is...
Relax and get in that flow consciousness, exactly.
So I was jarred by our group getting like tripped out and in that kind of, I was startled by some of the ways that our group was being, and I was going, and then there was moments where I was like, wow, I can only imagine how a visitor might feel.
The ETs pick up on your intentions, and if you're really out there just to learn and really want to communicate with these extraterrestrials, well, it's going to happen.
Avahanam Narayanam Padma Bhavam Vasishtam Shaktim Chatat Putra Parasharam Cha Yasam Shukam Goda Panam Mahantam Govinda Yogindra Matashashisham. And we ask these extraterrestrial civilizations to join us as they begin to learn of us, to help us, and to understand us, even as we endeavor to understand them and welcome them here to this beautiful planet. Namaste.
Oh my gosh, another beautiful, stunning, absolutely stunning. Not an airplane.
Oh, here comes a military plane very quick. Yeah, there's a very fast military. Okay, they're gonna go. Oh. It turned right to it. Yeah.
Whoa.
Literally, my heart literally sunk when the jet got to where the craft had to phase out. Yeah. And to feel all that love build, and then to feel that jet coming in, and it was like on a heart level, my heart literally sunk when the jet crossed the path where it had to take off.
So in the camera, that's what you got. You got this light traveling, and you can see it's not like a satellite where it's got a path. It's got a movement. Yeah, and then it's gone.
When I was 17, I injured myself. I got so infected. And at the time, because I was very poor and I didn't have any health care, I just laid there and I got sicker and sicker and sicker, and I had a near-death experience. I found myself out in deep space. And it was this experience of complete oneness with the cosmos, not just with Earth and life on Earth, but with the stars and the infinity of creation. It certainly altered the course of what I would end up doing, because I then learned meditation. I actually became very aware of the power of the mind.
This experience helped guide the direction of his life. Though Greer went on to earn a medical degree and raise a family, he continued to study consciousness and contact. And decades later, it seems he would be the doctor called upon first to examine a very unusual body.
This came to us in the last couple of years, and there's a man who runs an institute in another country that I cannot talk about. But he came into possession of a little creature. It is humanoid. It does not look human.
We have acquired an EBE, an extraterrestrial biological entity. We're flying over to Europe soon to take some tissue samples and do some DNA testing.
This was found in the Atacama Desert. We don't know how it came about. Here's the great view of the face and cheekbone, very complex. Now there is a fracture here, and behind this right ear is caved in, and that's how this ET being was killed.
We have the best scientists in the U.S. from Stanford that are going to be doing the testing itself to see what this really is, and also to rule out what it's not.
The initial reaction that I had is the same reaction that many of my colleagues here at Stanford and elsewhere have had when I've shown them, is that, wow, what is this? The question is important enough in at least two ways. The primary reason is that there's a lot of claims about specimens and claims about aliens. And of course, there's a lot of ridicule associated with that. So one of the best things that we should be doing, of course, then is bringing the best scientific techniques to bear. The techniques are available, the techniques are cheap, the answers are nearly absolute, so let's do it. And it's so exciting because it's not just... In setting up for this, I'm going to be giving Steve not only the tubes that this should be going into, but I'm also going to be sending across the microscope that I feel they should be using to do the analysis with. Before we even get started with some of the analysis, I think it's going to be important to rule out some of the obvious critiques that could come up. And one of those critiques is that this is a syndrome or a mutation. This is a bone dysplasia. And luckily, here at Stanford, we happen to have literally the world's expert, the man who wrote the book on bone dysplasias and syndromes, a gentleman by the name of Dr. Ralph Lockman, who has kindly agreed to look at the specimen, both the pictures as well as the CT scans and the x-rays, to help determine whether or not it's anything that he's ever seen before. I think that a dozen or even 15 years ago, answering the question of what is this would really not have been possible because the kinds of technologies were not available as are available today. But really the DNA tells the story. And because we have the computational techniques, that allows us to determine in very short order whether in fact this is human. So this will be basically an absolute level of proof as to what this actually is.
The problem is not proving that UFOs exist. It's when you begin to expose the energy and propulsion systems behind how they're getting here. You're talking about unveiling an entirely new science that would replace oil, gas, coal, nuclear power, public utilities. And this is the $600 trillion problem.
So the patent office, after they fired me, I had to wait 6 years before I got rehired. Everybody at the office was avoiding the case. But when they finally did, the arbitrator wrote an 85-page report on how the media had caused my dismissal. So I only got a 30-day suspension out of the whole thing, which was taken out of the tiny little bit of 6-year back pay. So that was great.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
it was.
wonderful. Yeah,
it made
that's
it all
wonderful.
worth it, so to speak, because that's how we were able to open the offices and stuff.
It was very comfortable. No feeling of being shocked or anything else, just a good feeling, comfortable.
What scientists need to do, and normal people need to do, is they need to look at the hardcore evidence, decide that, oh my gosh, ETs are real, and then get over that. And if that's the case, then you can start extrapolating, because they're getting here, which means they have solved the physics problem, if you will.
That's an actual photograph that Mark Whitford took, a friend of mine. And you see the stars in the background. So this is a fixed camera. The craft was a triangular craft moving away from him, and all of a sudden it makes a right angle turn. Apparently it has what I would describe as inertial shielding. It's the only way something can make a right angle turn without having everybody killed inside of the craft.
Though we experience inertial forces every day, their origins remain a mystery. However, there are theories that point to interactions between objects with mass and a quantum energy field.
Inertia is due to zero-point energy interaction. So you're interacting with a charged matrix, which is a zero-point field. If you try to change that, then you get a reaction force. There must be an interference shield of electromagnetic nature that would stop that interaction with the zero-point field. And you can suspect that UFOs have already figured this out, because they wouldn't be flying around and still have inhabitants.
New energy scientists today are attempting to find new ways to define the relationship between electricity, gravity, magnetism, and propulsion. But as history has shown, change does not always come easy.
It's like Newton. Why is that apple falling? Nobody ever asked that question before or even tried to come up with an answer. And Newton comes up with something called Newton bucket, or Newton's problem. The only guy that solves it 300 years later is Einstein. So, how smart can we be? If you look at everything normal within the conventional wisdom, you're not going to learn anything new.
My name is Morgan Boardman. I am the Chief Financial Officer of Morningstar Applied Physics. My business partners are Paul Murad and Dr. John Brandenburg.
What we're doing, like I said earlier, is we're using a magnetic field that's rotating about the axis with the hope of generating a magnetic vortex.
In essence, we are trying to start a civilian advanced research projects agency.
Okay, all right, so basically we have four options. Option one is a retarded potential. Option two is a lagging image, right? Yeah. Option three is pointing vector as a motive for propulsion, or how that may be what's happening, right? Yeah. And that's actually taking angular momentum and changing it into linear momentum if it's working the way we want it to, right? Yeah. Okay, and then the fourth one. The fourth one is that we are somehow either generating and or absorbing gravity waves.
You got it. Do we accept Einstein's viewpoint that thou shalt not go faster than the speed of light? If you look at a black hole, the comment is the gravity is so strong that nothing leaves. But it does have something that leaves the black hole, and that is gravity. So does that imply that gravity moves faster than the speed of light? Could be.
Gravity is another one of those seemingly self-evident forces that has raised a number of questions. How does it really work? How can we use it to our advantage? In the mid-1920s, T. Townsend Brown discovered that electric charge and gravitational mass are coupled, and that by building devices that harness these interactive forces, we could create advanced propulsion. At about the same time, Nikola Tesla and Thomas Edison won the Nobel Prize in physics, but both refused it. Tesla was at the end of a long career of inventing. He had advanced technology in the fields of X-ray, radio waves, internal combustion, and, of course, atmospheric electricity. When everything was said and done, he had earned 112 U.S. patents He proved that electricity can travel wirelessly in the air and ultimately died penniless. However, his work did influence many others, most notably Lester Hendershot and Dr. T. Henry Moray. Hendershot invented a magnetronic generator to energize an impossible flight, if fueled by gas, that took Charles Lindbergh and the Spirit of St. Louis from New York to Paris. Dr. T. Henry Moray developed the Moray valve, a device for extracting radiant energy from the zero-point field, and demonstrated this device hundreds of times and had dozens of signed affidavits supporting his science. Yet in the end, even these two notable scientists were ignored and bullied. Dr. Moray's device was hammered down and broken into pieces by a competitor, and before he could finish reconstruction, he passed away of natural causes. Hendershot fled to Mexico to continue work, but was found dead at 61 years of age, attributed to suicide.
There's all kinds of skullduggery that happened there. I don't think T. Henry Moray ever got a decent chance to ever do anything with that. There is absolutely no question that T. Henry Moray had a system that produced about 50 kilowatts out of a 55-pound box. The conventional electrodynamics model does not allow this to happen. In other words, it doesn't allow you to extract excess energy from the vacuum and use that to power your load. It costs just as much to restore it as was used to destroy it. So we got to put in more than we can ever get out in a load with such a squirrely circuit. And that's the only kind of circuit we've used in power systems since day one. We're still building them. We're still making power systems that deliberately kill them. So we pay the power company to have a giant wrestling match inside his generator and lose.
In the 1950s, there were some very provocative articles saying that, oh, electrogravitics is the best thing since sliced bread, how all the aviation companies are now backing electrogravitics, they're all doing experiments on it. Well, within a couple of years, there was no news at all.
Once they figured out that they could really control gravity, 1954, it all went black.
Do you think the boys in the black projects have solved that problem? Because it sure sounds like it from what the witnesses have told me.
I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know. Sorry, but I can't even think about it. I've seen so many things in my life, it's just hard to say.
A local inventor has discovered a way, hear this, to use water to run your car.
What Stan shared with me was interesting.
In order to run this engine off of water, we've also had to learn the ability to adjust the burn rate of hydrogen to co-equal the fossil fuels.
So he applies for a patent, and then he gets a call from actually a visitation by two guys from the Pentagon.
The Pentagon flew a lieutenant colonel in last week to look at Meyer's invention. There's talk of possibly using it in the Star Wars defense program and to run Army tanks.
But he asked that this become a public patent so that the civilians could benefit from it. And he indicated that if we don't do that, overseas people will.
In 1996, Meyer was sued by his investors, who claimed the device was not revolutionary, despite verification of the unique voltage intensifier circuit by the U.S. Patent Office. Meyer was brought to trial, but key evidence was not allowed. His oral testimony was not even recorded, due to an audio recorder malfunction, and the judge recessed early for vacation. Later, Meyer made an appeal, but was denied. He was found guilty of fraud and ordered to repay his investors.